Hi, this is Chris Polad, and I am giving you an overview for our uh, TraumaWise coaching curriculum for Real Lansing FC. We're going to be going over the science of relational trauma and soccer in this brief introduction. And so, first off, just to give you a sense of what we're dealing with, we're going to meet Isaac on the field. So he's just like any other soccer player. You notice that he might get a little upset from time to time, but otherwise, hard worker and knows soccer very well. So, what we can't see is what happens when Isaac is at home after mom or dad has been drinking. This is what forms the basis of relational trauma and what can fill what I'll be calling a relational or invisible backpack that kids carry with them. Because adversity is naturally hidden in families. And so we call big T and small t trauma um, to, to communicate the fact that there can be big things that happen, but also chronic, small relational issues can weigh kids down as well. And so I also want to call out the fact that in trainings like this, it may remind you of your own relational trauma. And if you ever need to talk, we certainly can go over that and I can advise a path forward. But kids typically don't talk about this degree of relational trauma because doing so will actually disrupt the relative safety and stability of their home, even with the relational trauma. So, if there is an obvious bit of hard evidence about abuse, we must act as mandated reporters that work with kids. But that's actually really rare. Absent this knowledge, knowing how we can be a positive force, even with a short interaction, is important. And I just want to say that again. If we learn the principles that we talk about in this curriculum, we can actually heal kids and give them a way to build resilience, even if there is unknown relational trauma happening in their worlds. But imagine a kid with a huge backpack that makes a mistake on the field and then he gets subbed out and then yelled at in front of his entire team. That's what we're trying to that's what we're trying to avoid in this scenario. But what we are trying to focus on though is the fact that there are two general outcomes that if we don't provide and build resilience in kids, that they can wind up in a pretty dark place. But if we provide them with a safe, resilient coaching situation, they, along with other people who have mentioned, sometimes it just takes one person to see and to believe in a child to spark the resilience factors that lead to success later on. So, what we're talking about in this curriculum is just using our interactions in the coaching environment to nudge kids towards success rather than dealing with hardships that can exist in the system and other places. So, what we're trying to do throughout this curriculum is balance this rugged self individualism that can be gained with street soccer situations with the team wisdom that can come by working together. And indeed, I have seen this multiple times with different teams in Real Lansing that we have tremendous and individual talent that these kids have been able to develop. But where we tend to fall short is coordinating that as a team. And there are some barriers when it comes to relational barriers that we are trying to work against. And so that's, again, another background principle of this curriculum. And so in the trauma world, we help people and we help organizations build healthy structures with three basic pillars or ideals in mind. And that is we are trying to teach self regulation, we're trying to provide conditions with felt safety, And remember that that safety is in the eye of the child, not the adult. And this may require some investigation and curiosity. And then also, we're trying to provide the above two with connection. And that is authentic, safe, nurturing connection. And that is the sense that whoever the coach is, they have their back. And if I mess up, I don't need to be afraid, but I can definitely expect to talk about my mistake and to hear about things that I can do to improve. And so the other thing that I want to highlight here is while we're embodying these three things, that we are talking about balancing structure and nurture. So that means the skills, the tactics, the rules, all the things that we need to develop soccer players are important and not going away. But balancing them with this safe, authentic, real connection with the coach is how we want to deliver that. And so, what I want to talk about is this concept of there are 5 B's that go into this invisible backpack that we carry with us from relational trauma, large and small. And it's like we're carrying an iceberg in this backpack, and we can only see that iceberg through the kids' behavior, the way that they handle feedback, the way that they give feedback to other people, their behavior on the field, working hard, walking away. All of these are behaviors, but they are driven by things that happen underneath. So the brain is the cortex, the biology is how we regulate through our autonomic nervous system, how our sensory world works, and then the belief system that underlies a lot of this. And of course, in a trauma setting, we're really concerned about shame, this sense that we're either defective, that we don't matter, or that we're dangerous and need to be hidden from others. And so we tend to operate in our nervous system on 2 levels, and that is we're either responding to threat or feeling like we are in a safe place and can thrive and grow. And so for coach application, we want to remember that we will see behaviors that could even be threatening. And what I've seen out in the field is mainly when kids get really verbally upset using profanities or talking back and forth with one another. So that would be a clue that we've seen a dysregulating activity. And so, what we want to get out of this curriculum is our ability to stay calm no matter what, so that we can stay regulated and curious. And that is going to help us provide the stability that the child needs when they're managing whatever is going on in their iceberg. And so that we're not letting that behavior determine our own emotional state. And so we need to build a culture of coach safety, self regulation, and connection. And just remember that you did not create the iceberg, but through connection, felt safety, and helping the children regulate, they can begin to understand and melt that iceberg slowly over time. And so we really use curiosity about what's going on. And in order to do that, we investigate without being dysregulated ourselves. So a soccer application could be that we see that a kid is not playing up to their ability level, or they get to a point in the game and they're just not listening to us at all. And so we could use a threat judgment system and start to yell at these kids more and more, or we could use a safety and connection way to investigate what's going on and then find ways to empower, build them up, give them space to get back to that level that we know that they can get at. So, another way to look at what's going on is this idea of bad behavior. And so, as we've already talked about, this is generally thought to be dysregulation. But what our classic paradigms have taught us is that when we see bad behavior, that this is willful disobedience, which deep in our minds and brainstems, we think, well, geez, they are attacking and disrespecting us as a coach, and we need to meet that with the same level of energy. But what a lot of trauma work has taught us is that these are actually survival strategies. And that is that this kid's actually acting like a knucklehead, but there's a lot in his invisible backpack that we don't understand. But these behaviors represent survival strategies that have worked in their lives one way or another. And so we can see them as dysregulated, and then we can respond with curiosity rather than additional yelling and judgment. And that is the key that can unlock their healing if they learn to understand that when they are dysregulated, that they're going to be met by someone who's not necessarily happy with their behavior, but are there to help them with the behavior, as opposed to telling them that they are shameful because of that behavior. And so, a little bit of brain science in this introduction, and that is we have this left right, top to bottom model of how the brain works. And then I will include this left right idea. And so think about the right side of our brain as a fast track that digs deep into our emotional framework. And that's how we can actually respond with very big emotional snap judgments. Whereas the left side of the brain is the linguistic side, which takes time to process things into words. And so it can run fairly slowly. But in some cases, this linguistic processing can exist very separately from this automatic process. And so that's one of the things that we're up against. So cognitive strategies tend to be left brain, linguistic, logical, linear, and time based, whereas the right brain tends to be nonlinear, more emotional. And the problem is if kids have dealt with relational trauma, then that has hit their entire brainstem in certain sequence. The brainstem develops between 0 and 9 months. The midbrain between 6 and 24. And that's where facial expressions and different simple speech can exist, coordination and movement. And then emotional responses between age 1 and 4. And then empathy, like controlling yourself, happens around 3 to 6. And so, in the trauma recovery world, right brain therapies are coming online, like EMDR, art treatment, and brain spotting, that don't use words but use safety in order to heal. So, just to kind of understand again that if you're dealing with a 12-year-old who gets dysregulated very easily, maybe embarrassed on the field and starts swearing at other kids, all of that happened, could be starting at birth for this kiddo. And so, all we can do is model secure attachment and be a rock for this child as this is happening, and then provide a circumstance where they can regulate pretty easily. And so the idea here that we're trying to use is this flipping the lid concept, where if we close our fist around our thumb, that is our tightly regulated, well working, and integrated brain. But when in the heat of the game or other things are happening, we can see dysregulation, and that is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So we can see kids, especially verbally or sometimes physically, fighting. They can actually leave a situation, which is fairly rare in sport. They can freeze and not know what at all to do, or they can fawn and somehow and suddenly become very compliant and nice. And so you have to understand that when this is happening, they are not using the most highly developed part of their brain. They're using this brain stem. And what we need to do is find ways to get that lid back down. And so that is what we'll be talking about in this entire curriculum, is ways that we can deal with this lid flipping and do it in a way that acknowledges that things have happened to this kid long before we were their coach, and then also make the most of those moments. So, how do we get kids to keep their lids back down or to keep them down in the first place? And that's why we are doing this curriculum. So, we are trying to learn how to embody secure attachment and then balance structure and nurture. And so, block one, we will start with the coach. And that is, we will take 2 sessions to explore keeping our own lids down. And that is the science of secure attachment with some self reflection. And for block two, we're going to use prevention strategies where we can empower the kids, set healthy boundaries, and use short scripts for behavioral management that will become important if we have to react to bad behavior. So we'll figure out how to use our behavior to calm kids in sessions 5 and 6. And then we'll have a capstone in person role play session where we can look at how we use engagement and de escalation strategies. But before I end this, I want to basically talk about the first lesson in this curriculum, and that is the value of repair. So I need to leave you with these thoughts. The curriculum can help and make kids resilient and build an incredible soccer club, but it will be a journey that we are all on together. At the very end of the day, what we will accomplish with trauma wise coaching will take time. It'll be a journey for us coaches and for the kids. And for those of you who like rules, this is not just some new rule to follow and fail at. We need to look at failure in the moment head on. So, what if you become dysregulated? Mostly looking at probably verbal situations, but heaven forbid worse than this. It can and will happen. Acknowledging coach dysregulation without blaming the kids, or in another way to think about it, appropriately processing things is super important. Like if the kids really didn't meet expectations, but when we think about dysregulation, the important aspect is how to repair. And so, what apologies do is they help kids level set what they just saw was not the goal or ideal. And it can actually serve to connect because problems can happen, and it's the repair again that's most important. So, the bottom line is this: the kids could be losing 8-0, college scouts are watching, the kids are cussing each other and the refs, but you are standing there on the field as the only one who is keeping your lid down. Though you are connected to the situation, you can apply structure and nurture in a wise way. But if you verbally dysregulate and allow chaos and rigidity to come in, it's on you to apologize and repair. Any responsibility shift of your own dysregulation to the kids is going to be a problem. So, that is, if you kids had just blank, it teaches them that they deserve that kind of treatment and reinforces the shame that they probably are already carrying from long before you got on the scene. So, there's a certain level of response that is not appropriate. We can see it on videos, parents sense it, and most importantly, the kids do. And so many will just tune it out if the coaches are dysregulated, but others will catch the shame. So coaching is a powerful differentiation or differential of power. And at its worst, it can be used to dehumanize, break down, and force compliance with playing time and good treatment. The coercive control and entitlement is the dark side that leads to abusive outcomes. But on the flip side, the light side is using the time with the kids to empower, teach, mentor, and develop. And as we are pushing further and further into maximizing coaching informed by the cutting edge trauma recovery science, we know that we will fail and slip into chaos and rigidity and yell and verbally dysregulate. So simply be ready with an apology or check in with the kids. And remember that personal responsibility is caught, not taught. And it starts with the coaches. So this is why block one is going to start with our own experience and our own attachment. So see you soon, and we'll move forward with the curriculum.